Good morning. My name is Cathleen Miller. It is my great honor to introduce a woman who has deeply inspired me with her heart-based activism and healing work for the good of all creation. Sherri Mitchell was born and raised on the Penobscot Indian Reservation, Penawapskig. She speaks and teaches around the world on issues of Indigenous rights, environmental justice, and spiritual change. Before I share Sherri Mitchell's many accomplishments, I want to offer a personal perspective. When we began to discuss speakers for this event, Sherri was at the top of my list. When I have heard her speak in activist, academic, and ceremonial spaces, I can feel the healing in her words. Whether she is talking about protecting the waters of the earth or praying for the deep healing of ancestral wounds, the ground beneath Sherri's words is a call to connection with each other and with the rest of creation. I remember a very cold day in Monument Square when Sherri was speaking prior to going to join the water protectors at Standing Rock. After her talk, Sherri invited us to hug her, to send our strength along with her. It was a powerful yet simple ceremony of connecting. Though I could not go to be on the ground at Standing Rock, I felt that I was able to send some of my spirit there. It gave me hope that we are indeed capable of healing the deepest of wounds that we all carry from a legacy of genocide and trauma on this land and from our own ancestors. Another powerful example of Sherri's leadership and heart-led work is the ceremonial space of healing the wounds of Turtle Island, which has taken place for the past 2 summers on Penobscot land. The ceremony is designed to heal our relationships with one another as human beings, and then to heal the relationship between human beings and the rest of creation. People have attended from every continent except Antarctica and have come together to pray with one heart and one mind for the healing of all life on Mother Earth. It's an amazing ceremony, and I would encourage you all to attend and to support Sherri's work in making this happen. Now I want to share some highlights of Sherri's work, other work. Sherri received her Juris Doctorate and a certificate in Indigenous Peoples Law and Policy from the University of Arizona. She is an alumna of the American Indian Ambassador Program and the Udall Native American Congressional Internship Program. She is the founding director of the Land Peace Foundation, an organization dedicated to the global protection of Indigenous land and water rights and the preservation of the Indigenous way of life. She has been actively involved with Indigenous rights and environmental justice work for more than 25 years. In 2010, she received the Mahoney Dunn International Human Rights and Humanitarian Award. In 2015, she received the Spirit of Maine Award. In 2016, Sherri's portrait was added to Robert Shetterly's portrait series, Americans Who Tell the Truth. She was also the recipient of the 2017 Hands of Hope Award from the Peace and Justice Center. Sherri has been deeply committed to cultivating and renewing the traditional and ceremonial practices of her people. She has worked in many capacities over the past 30 years, helping to highlight and advance the position of Wabanaki peoples. Sherri has been an advisor to the American Indian Institute's Traditional Circle of Indian Elders and Youth. She has also served as an advisor to the Indigenous Elders and Medicine Peoples Council of North and South America for the past 20 years. Sherri is the co-host of the syndicated radio program Love and Revolution Radio, which focuses on real-life stories of heart-based activism and revolutionary spiritual change. In 2018, Sherri published her first book, Sacred Instructions, Indigenous Wisdom for Living Spirit-Based Change. It is a powerful book, and I would encourage you all to read it. And Sherri told me that she has a few copies for sale today, if you would like to pick it up. So without further delay, please join me in welcoming Sherri Mitchell.
Jeez, she made me cry. Kwe. Willie Spuzzwell, hello, good morning. Guanu, welcome. Andiliwisi, Wanahamu Kwasset, Nachio Benwebskeg. Indilnabama Kawasus, Nil Benwebskeg, Nagakakakus, Nil Tibaik. My name is Sherri Mitchell. I'm from the Penobscot Nation. My family is Bear Clan from the Penobscot Nation and Crow Clan from the Passamaquoddy tribe at Tibaik. Nalita Huziu and Diane. Very happy to be with you today. There's an elder named Shees Crow who is from the Crow Nation who once said, "The soil you see beneath your feet is not ordinary soil. It is the dust, the bone, the flesh, and the blood of my ancestors. The soil beneath this building contains the dust, the flesh, the bone, and the blood of my ancestors." And I would like us all to just rise for a moment if you're able to acknowledge their presence here with us. Thank you very much. There's a handy little timer here on this computer, which is good because I try not to prepare for these talks and just see what happens when I show up, because I feel like when we really show up, that's when the magic happens. So I'm going to try to really show up and be here with you today and try to stay within the allotted time that they've given me so that we have some time to talk after. I want to be able to have a discussion with you, to answer questions, and to get into any subject area that you're interested in a little bit more deeply. I want to start out by just reading a section from my book, from chapter 11. The title of the chapter is "Women Are the Water Bearers of the Universe." As Skidjinuwiapid, an Indigenous woman, I have been taught that the women nurture life into being. We are the creators of life and the protectors of the lives that we create. Women possess a unique magic. As women, we are able to call forth life from the other side and cultivate that life in the quiet space below our hearts. Within our bodies, we hold an opening to the divine, a portal that allows souls to enter into this world. Because we are connected to the divine through the space governed by our hearts, we are also the keepers of divine intuition and heart-based wisdom. Thus, the teachings that we carry are essential for keeping our societies spiritually healthy and emotionally balanced. Every life that passes through our wombs is nurtured and developed in water. We carry the waters of life within us, making us the water bearers of the universe. This is why women's ceremonies are centered on the water and governed by Grandmother Moon. These ceremonies are our way of acknowledging that the water that lives within us and around us is central to life and connected to the movement of the universe. We are indispensable to the perpetuation, protection, and balancing of life. When the women are absent, when they are silenced or ignored, the heart-based wisdom needed to guide and balance life is missing, and life goes into disharmony, causing the safety of all to come into question. The women are not only the creators of life, they are also the keepers of the thread of life that connects us through time. As the life force flows through them each month, it connects them to the very source of life that created us all. Without the guidance of the women, this thread becomes lost, and the hearts and spirits of the men and children become disconnected. I wanted to start out with that because, for me, that frames our role as women in the society. And in this time of evolution, when gender roles are shifting, when there is a neutrality and a fluidity that exists within the identification of gender, I think it's important to recognize that the importance of the divine feminine and the divine masculine has not changed. That is an evolutionary movement of energy that requires us all to merge those forces within us so that we can become whole human beings. And to me, what's been missing in the public discourse for centuries, millennia, is the voice of the divine feminine. Whether that voice energetically flows through one who identifies as a man or a woman is irrelevant. The importance of recognizing the aspect of the divine feminine, which is the heart-based wisdom, the divine guidance that is needed to hold our world in balance, the absence of which puts all life into a state of precariousness, I guess is the best way to put it. We all feel that right now. We all feel the impacts of generations of silence. We feel the impact of generations of diminishment. We feel the impact of generations of belittling, dehumanizing, and villainizing the role and the voice of the women or the divine feminine within our societies. So we have specific beliefs related to these two energies. I wanted to share some of that with you today. And what we learn about these divine energies is that we all have an obligation to incorporate them into our way of being. One of the stories that I talk about in the book, which is a story that I love to tell, is about the word for grandfather. The word for grandfather is musmu. And that comes from the word for my heart, which is musun. And that is a feminine aspect, that heart-based wisdom. And so grandfather, having that name, musmu, indicates that the man has worked with his own energy to balance, to harmonize, to soften himself over time, till he gets to this point of older age where he's able to take on that name musmu, indicating that he has incorporated into his masculine being the heart-based wisdom of the feminine. That's the true measure of emotional and spiritual maturity for the masculine, is to have merged that feminine aspect into their being and to be able to actually put that into practice out in the world. And so when I think about that story, I think about the roles that we all have to play in relation to bringing forth the wisdom of our hearts and putting that into action, because that is the perfect marriage of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. Our word for husband and wife in one of our languages, there's more than one language for the Wabanaki people. And one of the words for husband and wife is ohadi for the wife and obadeum for the husband. And so what obadeum means is, the word that we use for husband is the one who takes me under his skin or under his blanket. And that's the reference to the reaching in of the masculine, reaching in toward that feminine side of himself. The word for wife, ohadi, means the one who keeps me connected to my heart. And so that's the role of the feminine. The role of the feminine is to keep the family connected to their heart-based truth and divine wisdom. And so when we look at those roles within society, we see that regardless of gender identification, the importance of incorporating those aspects, merging them, harmonizing them, and balancing them, and then putting them into this walk out in the world is critically important, because we have been living for a long time without that balance. And so when we want to do something in the world, we can sit and we can dream about it. We can visualize it, and we can put it on our little vision board, right? We can look at it every day and bring up happy feelings of, what it's going to be like when that happens, right? Because that's what we've been told to do. But unless we take a corresponding step in the real world, that will never come to fruition. And so when we think about how that practically applies to our lives, it's the combination of being able to visualize from the deepest, truest place within you the type of world that you want to inhabit, and then having that external force, that masculine energy, the impetus to actually put that vision, that dream, that plan into action. And so we have this program under the Native American Graves and Repatriation Act called repatriation. What repatriation is it is going to museums, educational institutions, and other public venues and bringing home our ancestors whose remains have been kept there in some of these really horrific displays. And so one of the things that happens when you're involved in this work, which is an incredible privilege to be invited to participate in this work, is that there's always a spiritual connection with the ancestors that you're caring for and bringing home. There is one story, well, there's two that I'm going to tell you, but just to get this point across, there's one story where there was a woman named Donna Augustine, who was a Mi'kmaq woman from up in Canada, and she had been doing repatriation work for a number of years. And she was going to a museum, a very popular museum that I won't name, but it might potentially start with an S and end with an N. She was retrieving the remains of some of her ancestors to bring them home. And so while she was standing there, they all go into this space in ceremony. You know, they are actively in ceremony when they're in that process of bringing those ancestors home. It's a very sacred, a very reverent process. And she kept hearing this grandmother's voice saying over and over again, very tearfully, "Would you come in? Would you come in?" And she didn't know what it meant. So what she did was she wrote down the names of all of the tribes who had things stored in that same location. And when she got home, she picked up the phone and she started calling them and asking them, "Do you know what this means?" And finally, she got a hold of somebody in our community and asked them, "Do you know what "would you come in" means?" And they said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, I was, I kept hearing this and I wanted to know what it meant." And the person that she talked to said, "Would you come in" means, "Will you help me? Will you help me?" So that elder, that ancestor who was being kept there, their remains in this small box in this museum, was asking her to help them get home. And so we made arrangements and we brought that ancestor home and we put them to rest with their relatives. And so there's another story connected to that during another repatriation ceremony. So one of the things that happens is that, we have adjusted our ceremonies based on the messages that we've received from these ancestors. How to care for them. What are some of the things that re-traumatize their spirit that we might be doing? How can we prevent that? And so we never leave them alone. From the time that we take them until they're placed in the ground and the ceremony for their rest has been concluded, we stay with them, we talk to them, we pray with them, we sing for them. And so there was a young woman who was doing an overnight visit with one of the ancestors that was being brought home. Everybody else had gone home and gone to bed, and she was singing to this elder, this ancestor. And all night long, she kept hearing him telling her the same phrase over and over again. And this story was told to me by my friend Doreen Day, who was an Anishinaabe woman. And so she said, when we came back in the morning, this young girl was saying she wrote it down how it sounded phonetically and wanted to know, what does this mean? And the oldest person that was there said, you know, that sounds like the way that elders used to speak when I was a little girl. And so she took that young girl to the oldest speaker in their community and sat down with her and said, can you tell me what this means? And she got teary-eyed hearing the language in that way, because language changes over time. You know, and I remember my grandmother telling me that the language, the way that she spoke it, was different than the language that they were speaking at that time when we were asking her to teach us, you know, the language. And so the young girl told her where she had heard it, and she started to cry. And what that elder was telling her was, we dreamed you into the future. And so when we think about the power of our ability to be able to visualize and to dream into being the future reality that we want to inhabit, we can go back and we can recognize the importance of incorporating that heart-based wisdom and divine intuition into the process of our dreaming. Because we are creating every moment of every day, whether we recognize it or not. And so when we become conscious dreamers of our future, and we create those dreams without the guidance of that heart-based wisdom, without the benefit of having that intuitive guidance, the world that we create becomes imbalanced. And so when we look at the world today that we are living in, it's easy to see how the denial, the diminishment, and the villainization of the women has contributed to a society that is almost exclusively based on external, forceful action. It's easy to be able to see how our young people who have been raised in this just add water society, who want instant gratification, are disconnected from their own intuitive wisdom and their own internal processes of creation. And so all of those things have been written into our dogma. They've been written into our academic doctrines. They have been a guiding principle that has helped to evolve or devolve the consciousness of our current generations. And so when I think about the power that we have as writers, the power that we have to be able to actively vision and create a new reality for the future, I know that that power lies not in a repetition of patriarchal power or in the repetition of patriarchal ideas of success that are devoid of the feminine, but in a true incorporation of that divine, heart-based, intuitive guidance and an actualization of that into the real world. And so I've had the honor twice of speaking at the Association for the Study of Women in Mythology's annual matriarchal conference. And one of the things that I told the hundreds of women scholars who were there, we have to stop looking for ourselves within the patriarchal history. We have to stop looking for ourselves and validating ourselves and looking to justify our inherent truth within the patriarchal doctrine and strictures because we are not there. And if we try to recreate ourselves in accordance with those guidelines, we will never be there. Because one of the things that has happened is that the rise of women in positions of power, whether it's in the academy, in the political arena, in the business world, has been a repetition of masculine ideals of power. How much more powerful can you get than calling forth life from the other side, bringing it into your body and birthing it into this world? And how has that true power of mothering, nurturing, and shaping the minds and the hearts of our children been diminished? The academy may need a representation of the matriarch within their halls, but the world desperately needs the return of the matriarch in our hearts and in our homes. And so as we're preparing to put forth whatever it is that we birth, whether it's another human being, whether it's a project, whether it's a book, whether it's the creation of community, whatever it is that we birth, we have to ensure that we go through our natural process of birthing that within the quiet space beneath our hearts. Calling into that space, that void that exists within our bodies that connects us to divine wisdom. Bringing that into that space beneath our hearts, mingling that wisdom with the wisdom of our hearts, and then bringing it forth into the world. With absolute faith in the legitimacy, the rightness, and the necessity of what we are birthing, without having to have it justified, validated, and approved of by the patriarchal society. Because that is what the world needs now. And so I want to talk about this natural process. Because there's a difference between natural and normal. Do you agree? And so what we have become accustomed to as normal is a threat to all life on our planet. What we have become accustomed to as normal has separated us not only from the source of our existence, but from one another in really profound ways. And so we have to be able to look at honestly what we have come to define as normal and see how far that is detached from our natural state of being. Because this natural process that I'm talking about is what we call skijinawe b'mauswagan. It is a way of being in relation to life that is harmonized and balanced. And we are not living that way of life, or very few of us are. Instead, we're living a constructed normal that is separated from that way of being. And so if we can really examine what we have defined as normal and be honest about ourselves regarding our detachment, our lack of knowing, our longing for a more natural state of being, then we can begin the process of reconciling the two. And once we do that, then we're going to be able to birth a new normal that is more aligned with our desire to continue this legacy of life that we're all connected to. And to me, that is our most powerful role. To me, that is why we're here. To me, none of us were born into this particular time by accident. The fluidity, the neutrality that's emerging within our gender paradigms is not an accident. All of that is purposeful. We were born for this time. We were born to shatter the old paradigms, not with force, but with new examples of being that are more aligned with our heart, more aligned with the continuation of life, more aligned not with tolerance, but true acceptance and affirmation of all ways of being. And I admire you for choosing to be here at this time. And I know that you did, because my daughter, I don't know how she ended up like this, but she's very outspoken. And when she was 4 years old, she was mad at me. And one of the things that she used to do when she was little, and she had never, been exposed to sign language, is she used to tell me off in sign language. So she didn't know sign language, but when she was mad at me, she'd, and I said, well, there, you told me, Now she actually does know sign language, and it's been something that she's been passionate about. But when she was small, she came up to me one day when she was really mad at me, and she said, with her hands on her hips, "You listen to me, woman." You know it's going to be good when it starts like that, right? She was 4. And she said, "I want you to know that I didn't choose you. My brother chose you, and I chose to follow my brother. So when you're talking to me, I want you to think about that." And I said, well, I definitely will, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. And over time, she described to me the experiences that she's had with her brother through centuries. And how the last time her brother died, she held his head in her lap, and they promised that they would always come back together. So I know that she chose to be here. I know that her brother chose me. And so we've all chosen to be here at this specific time, and it's not an accident. And it's not an easy time to be alive. We are being asked to facilitate an evolutionary leap in consciousness. And every single one of us is an agent of that change in some way. So what I hope most to impart is the need for trusting the divine feminine within you, reacquainting yourself with that heart-based intuitive wisdom that is the creator, the protector, the nurturer, and the cultivator of life. And however you identify gender-wise, that you utilize that as the guiding principle for whatever it is that you give birth to. Because the world desperately needs the birthing of the heart-based, intuitive, life-protecting, life-nurturing, life-affirming energy to become the dominant force in our world. So with that, I'm going to stop and open it up to questions. So I just want to say, Kachiwaliwan, thank you so much for listening to me. And Basilda and Dilnabamuk, I offer this to you and to all my relations. Thank you. So ask me anything. Ask me anything at all. Ask me how I ended up on the wrong campus this morning and thought I was doing great because I was early.
Geez, oh my God. Okay. It's very inspiring to hear you and your philosophy. How do we put that in practice in our everyday lives? And we're within that construct that you talked about.
I think that it's difficult for so many people to imagine how to do that because we feel like we're, those little race car things that you can buy, and they have the loop-de-loops and all that stuff, and they have those little tracks. We feel like we're on those tracks, and we're going around and we can't see our way to get to this other place. So I had a dream one time. I've had a lot of pretty impressive trauma in my life, and I'm grateful for it today because it's shaped who I am. It's broken me open rather than breaking me apart. And I'm thankful that I had the strength and the resiliency to allow that process to unfold, because I know that it's not easy to go through very trying times and to emerge with your heart intact. And so we live in a world where it seems that our hearts are being attacked on every front. As human beings, we were not designed to have to deal with and have to face the type of trauma that we now have live streamed into our living rooms every day. And so we're in this constant state of fight or flight. And within that, there's also this freeze mechanism. And so, fight, flight, or freeze. So oftentimes we feel paralyzed to get off from this track, right? So I had a dream one time, and sometimes our dream symbolism is really hard to understand. This was not the case. So I had this dream that I was in a clown car, and I was sitting in the passenger seat, and it was going around this block. And there were buildings falling, fire hydrants were blowing up, there were explosions going off, bombs coming in. It was a war zone. And every time we got to this one corner, I could look up and I could see this green hillside with this cute little house, and the sun was shining. It was dark and it was smoky and it was terrifying where I was, but we got to that one corner, and every time I could see it, and I was telling the driver, we got to go up there, we got to go up there. And the driver of this clown car kept changing. So it was like, all of the clowns coming through and jumping in the driver's seat and driving around the track. And then eventually we got close to that corner, and I looked to tell the driver, no, we need to go over here. And there was nobody in the driver's seat. And I said, oh, I guess I better get in the driver's seat, right? And so that's really what it's all about. It's really about making the choice to suffer the consequences of moving outside of this unhealthy and unnatural norm. It's about not allowing ourselves to be fooled. Right now, this is important, by identity politics, because there are a lot of people running for office who give the illusion of choice. There are a lot of people running for office who are in possession of a vagina, right? but they are not embodying that divine, heart-based, intuitive wisdom that the world needs right now. So we have to look beyond all of that smoke, the water mains blowing up, the bombs coming in, and we have to figure out, do we have the courage to drive away from the illusion of choice toward the choice that we actively want to feed? We have to be willing to look within ourselves, to find within ourselves the core of truth that lies beneath all of the debris of all of those illusions that we have been spoon-fed over the years. We have to decolonize our own hearts and minds. And then we have to have the courage to bring forth what we find underneath all of those layers, even when it's not popular, even when it draws criticism, even when it means you're actively being attacked. I'm actively being attacked nearly every day, but I am now sitting on that grass with my roots connected to Mother Earth and the sun shining into my being, and I know the rightness of my position because it feels right here. Sometimes it can't be justified here. It's not accepted out there. But I know the truth of it, and I allow that truth to guide me. And so it's really an act of tremendous courage. You know, and I think that it's challenging too, because for so long the voice of the women has been suppressed. And so what happens when your voice has been suppressed for millennia? That there's a certain degree of force required in order to bring that voice forward out into the world. So how do we work with the energy of that force to make sure that it comes out, but that it comes out wrapped in loving intent? I can very sternly tell something, your actions and your behavior are a threat to life. What you're doing is not in alignment with the truth of your spiritual being. What you're doing is compromising the health and safety of my grandchildren. The harm that you are causing with your words and your actions is destructive to the spirit of those who are hearing you. But I can do it knowing that somewhere inside of you there is a perfect, beautiful soul who has been lost, right? And so when I think about, because it's challenging right now to think about public figures who may or may not have tiny hands and feel charitable. It's very challenging to not want to condemn them personally, because we want somebody to be ultimately responsible for the horrific things that are happening. But if I go and I scream in their face, this is what they're going to do. And when that happens, all opportunity for whatever you're trying to communicate, whatever heart-based wisdom you're trying to bring in, hits a roadblock and it doesn't get in. But if I lean into them and I say, I can't align your behavior in this situation with what I know must be the truth of your being. I can't understand the choice for destruction of life. I can't understand it. And I speak with some degree of softness. They lean in. You know, I want to hear you, but your voice is gentle, so I got to lean in. When that happens, there's a receptivity that allows for the energy of that heart-based wisdom to come and enter into their field. Stuff may not be getting through here. They may still be condemning you and judging you and criticizing you, but you can bet it's getting in here. And over time, the seed of that has an impact. And so we see thousands of examples every single day of action that is aligned with unguided, disconnected external force. In my opinion, and I'm just a girl from the res, we need an equal number of examples of courageous, heart-based action in the world. So thinking about how we put that into practice in our daily lives is a personal thing. Maybe you care about feeding the hungry. Maybe you care about stopping the bombs. Maybe you care about protecting the water. Whatever it is that your heart calls you to do, make a conscious choice to connect with the truth within you and incorporate that into every action you take. Because a lot of our activism is really an act of conquest. We want to conquer the opponent, push them off the mountain, and put our own person on there. That's just a perpetuation of conquest. How do we integrate the difference? How do we make space for collaboration, cooperation, connection, so that we can move forward together, right? Because oneness and sameness are not equal. We need all of our diversity in order for us to be a healthy, thriving human community, just like our environment needs biodiversity. So how do we overcome our own obstacles? I mean, it's a lifetime of work. I'm still working on it because there are times when my language surrounding some public officials is quite colorful, and I judge them. But it doesn't feel good in my body to do that. It doesn't feel good in my body. So that's a long answer to your simple question. I could give you X, Y, and Z. You go out and do that, but that's not going to be your truth. If you want to be able to bring that forward in your daily life, it has to be connected to your truth. Because if it doesn't fire you up and inspire you, ignite that burn within your belly, right? And that inspiring push that you feel when it's really driven by your heart, then you're never going to be able to sustain it. So, yeah, thank you.
I think that's all we have time for, actually.
Okay.
But,
Sorry.
But I think you'll be around, right?
I'll be around
part of the day?
I'll be around for part of the day, and
So-
yeah, I did bring some books with me. So if anybody would like one of the books, then just let me know. So, Kachiwali one, thank you so much.